Few in Denver knew the secrets hidden beneath their city. When the reconstruction of an old city quarter began, no one could have imagined that ancient forces would awaken from their century-long slumber. This story is about how a random discovery turned a peaceful life into a nightmare. What lies hidden in the dark basement of an abandoned house? Why did the workers start disappearing? This tale will make you wonder, are you ready to delve into the darkest corners of the past? Stay with us to learn all the details, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mystic Tales, for the most captivating stories. In one of Denver's old quarters, which hadn't seen major repairs for a long time, reconstruction work began. The abandoned houses, once full of life, now stood empty and dilapidated. The locals had long avoided these places, considering them cursed. Jackson, a young builder, was tasked with clearing out the basement of an old mansion on Main Street. This house stood out, even among the other abandoned buildings, with its gloominess and neglect. Jackson and his team arrived early in the morning, ready for a long day of work. The basement of the house turned out to be surprisingly deep and spacious. There were many old boxes, furniture, and other junk covered with a thick layer of dust. The workers began to clear the debris, but soon came across something unusual. In a far corner of the basement, they found a massive iron door, clearly leading somewhere else. The door was rusty and seemed very old. There were no inscriptions on it, only strange symbols that no one could decipher. Jackson felt an inexplicable unease looking at these symbols. However, work is work, and the door had to be opened. After a few minutes of effort, the workers finally managed to break the old lock and swing the door open. Behind the door, they discovered a narrow corridor leading even deeper underground. The air here was damp and musty, as if no one had set foot there for centuries. Jackson and his team decided to explore what lay ahead. The corridor led them to a spacious underground room, the walls of which were covered with ancient frescoes. The frescoes depicted scenes of old rituals and sacrifices, which gave everyone present an unsettling feeling. In the center of the room was a massive stone sarcophagus, covered with layers of dust and cobwebs. Jackson felt a chill run down his spine, but curiosity got the better of him. They decided to open the sarcophagus. When the lid of the sarcophagus was removed, a thick cloud of dust rose from it. Inside lay a man, or at least what had once been a man. The mummy was dressed in ancient clothing, and in its hands was clutched a strange amulet. Jackson cautiously took the amulet, and at that moment, something terrible happened. The air in the room became heavy and thick, as if darkness itself was gathering around them. The mummy suddenly began to move, and its eyes opened, glowing with a red light. The workers panicked and rushed to the exit, but the door suddenly slammed shut with a loud bang. They were trapped in this underground room with the awakened ancient being. In horror, they realized they had awakened an ancient vampire. Jackson felt the creature staring intently at him and realized that the amulet in his hands played a key role in what was happening. The vampire slowly rose from the sarcophagus, its movements both sinister and graceful at the same time. In desperation, Jackson tried to throw the amulet, but it seemed to be stuck to his hand. The vampire began to approach, its gaze full of hunger and hatred. The workers screamed and ran around the room, but there was no way out. The vampire took its first step, and Jackson felt his strength leaving him. He understood that the amulet not only connected him to this creature, but also began to drain his life. At that moment, he recalled the ritual depicted on the frescoes. Remembering the scenes on the walls, Jackson realized that the only way to save himself and his team was to complete the ritual. He began shouting the words he barely remembered, hoping it would stop the vampire. vampire paused for a moment, its eyes narrowing. But then it moved forward again, seemingly delayed only briefly by the ritual. Jackson knew time was running out and began looking for a way out of this situation. At that moment, one of the workers found an old diary hidden behind one of the stones in the wall. The diary described the last days of a man who had tried to seal the vampire centuries ago. From the diary, Jackson learned that the amulet was the key to sealing the vampire. But to do this, he had to recite the incantation written in the last entry. His strength waning, he began to read the words, hoping they would help. The vampire froze, its body trembling. It seemed the incantation was working. Jackson felt the amulet start to glow, and his hand was freed from its grasp. He finished reading the incantation, and the vampire suddenly screamed in pain. With each word of the incantation, the vampire grew weaker, its body starting to disappear. Soon, only dust remained, which scattered around the room. The door suddenly swung open, and the workers were able to escape. Jackson stood in the basement, breathing heavily, but with a sense of victory. He looked at the now harmless amulet and decided that its place was in a museum where no one could use its power again. After this incident, the basement was sealed, and the story of the vampire became a legend among the locals. No one dared to enter those places where the horrors had occurred. Jackson and his team were the heroes of the day, but they knew they would never be able to forget the horrors they had experienced. This experience changed them forever, leaving a mark on their souls. The local residents, having learned the story, began to treat old buildings and basements more cautiously, realizing that something much scarier than they could imagine might be hidden beneath their feet. However, the story of the ancient vampire became popular among tourists, and many came to Denver to hear this eerie legend from the witnesses themselves. The place became a kind of attraction for lovers of mysticism and horror. Despite the popularity, Jackson and his team decided never to return to that basement. They knew that one day the darkness might return, and it was better not to awaken those who slept in its embrace. This story became a lesson for all of us. Sometimes it's better to leave the past alone and not try to uncover its secrets. But if you still dare to look into the dark corners of history, be prepared that what you see might change your life forever. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mystic Tales, give a like, and leave a comment. Your likes and subscriptions help us create new, even more captivating stories. If we reach 5,000 likes, we will release a story entirely based on real events. Support us, and you will see even more amazing tales. We are growing and really need your support and attention. Thank you for your subscriptions, likes, and comments.